I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 140. If you don't already know, I'm Kev Tardello, coming to you on Thursday, November 2nd, and the Bobcats are back in black, wearing black jerseys again. I can't remember the last time we've seen double black jerseys in a season, if at all. I don't think we've seen it at all. Interesting move. I don't know what prompted that, but I like the black jersey look, you know? Occasionally. When it comes with the gold top, gold pants like they have right now, I think it's a pretty sweet look. And they're back at Bobcat Stadium, 4 p.m. kickoff, Georgia Southern. Hope to see y'all out there. We got plenty to talk about with that game coming up. But before we get there, this episode is brought to you by TGC, the GalindoCollective.com. That's GALINDO, GalindoCollective.com. A team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people planning and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. If you own property or a business and want to maximize its profitability, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms on Twitter at TGC_LLC and on Instagram and Facebook at the Galindo Collective. Shout out to my guy, Rick Galindo, a true Texas State sicko, a Texas State grad. He sponsored us all the way back in the summer through the whole season. Can't thank him enough. Go check them out for any of your needs, thegalindocollective.com. We are also sponsored by Balcones Roofing and Remodeling, the most experienced F-Wave roofing contractor in Central Texas. F-Wave is a highly impact-resistant lifetime shingle with stunning designer curb appeal. It is the only roofing product on the market with an exclusive hail warranty. Talked about it plenty of times. That hail warranty in Central Texas is like gold. You know that hail's coming, so you might as well get prepared. Preemptive strike with that F-Wave. Shout out to new sicko Carl Larson, a converted Gamecock. Now he's over here on the good side with the maroon and gold. Check them out in this area at balconesroofsaustin.com. You can call them at 512-937-8805. That's 512-937-8805. And follow them on Twitter at Balcones Roofing. It's BALCONES, Balcones Roofing and Remodeling. We are also partnered with Thaddeus Watkins. You know who Thad Watkins is. San Marcos Edward Jones financial advisor. Does your financial advisor take the time to really listen to you? Is your financial strategy personalized to you and your family? Will your financial advisor be there as your life and financial situation change? When you work with Thaddeus Watkins, your San Marcos Edward Jones financial advisor, he focuses on what's important to you. You'll work together and use an established process to create a personalized financial strategy backed by the advice, tools, and resources to help you reach your goals. Contact Thaddeus Watkins at 737-373-8200. That's 737-373-8200 and at edwardjones.com/Thaddeus-Watkins and on Twitter at Big Thad, BIGGTHADD_. Shout out to Thad Watkins, former Texas State offensive lineman. Who better to protect your finances than my guy, Thad Watkins? We are also sponsored by Austin Patchmaster, austin.patchmaster.com, one of our earliest sponsors. Getting back into the mix. Is your ceiling or wall cracked? Need that popcorn ceiling removed? Did you punch a hole in your wall after the Texas State loss last weekend? That was a frustrating one. Hit up my guy, Michael Clements, a true Texas State sicko, a Texas State grad. Austin Patchmaster is servicing the greater Austin area. They can also give you referrals to the Dallas, Houston area if you're there. But if you're in this area, hit them up. They can come fix you up. Anything you need in your house, they got you. That's austin.patchmaster.com. And you can call them at 512-200-3888. That's 512-200-3888. 3888. And then a quick plug for my guys at Chilsey, chilsey.com, Chillzey. It's handing out these koozies at the last game here. Got a few more. I'm going to hand them out at this game as well. You can get custom koozies like these. You can get custom tumblers like this one here at chilsey.com with these tumblers. If you punch in the code Bobcats at your checkout and order 6 or more of these, you can get them for $15 a piece. So if you have some sort of work event, a bachelor party, whatever you have going on, a family gathering, and you want to get everybody a bunch of tumblers, you can get a good price, get a custom tumbler, put whatever you want on there. He'll make you some great stuff. You can even put a Win Now or Get Bent logo if you feel so inclined. But check them out. Chilsey.com. Thank you to Dennis Redding over there. Another true Tech State sicko. Tech State grad over there. Check out our merch. Win Now or Get Bent. WNOGB.com. Right there. I saw a nice request for the hoodies that we have, the Texas State or the Texas Sickos. It's got the state of Texas with sicko in it. For one of those to say Win Now or Get Bent on the hoodie. I think that's a good call. I think you're going to see something cool like that coming up pretty soon. But we got lots of warm weather gear for you. Go check out WNOGB.com. We got you covered. Beanie coming soon. I'm picky on hats, as you know. Picking out a good beanie. They got to look right, you know. I'm not a big fan of the ones with the poof ball on the top. It's not a good look. Not in my opinion. Not unless you're like a 5-year-old or something, you know. But check it out. New mugs, new gear, all on WNOGB.com. All right, that's enough plugs. A lot of plugs. Let's talk about these Bobcats. So another game coming up for these Cats. They are going up against Georgia Southern on Saturday, coming off a loss. As all of you are well aware, 31-13 loss last weekend to Troy on homecoming. They have another chance at home. This will be the last of like a month-long homestand for the Bobcats where they had a home game, a bye week, and then 2 more home games. And then it's followed by 2 road games, and then they end at home with South Alabama. Next week, it'll be Coastal, and then after that, Arkansas State. Those 2 will be on the road for the Bobcats. But this week, Georgia Southern, this is a team that in the same conference, but they're in the East, so we don't see them every year, don't see them very often. Have seen them recently in 2021 and 2020. Didn't see them last year. This will be the 7th time they have played. The Bobcats have won 1 time. Stop me if you've heard this. I feel like we say this with a few of these Sun Belt teams, but they have not beaten this team since they went to the Sun Belt. The last win was 2005 for Texas State, 50-35. We'll talk about that game here in just a second. But 0-5 against Georgia Southern since joining the Sun Belt. 2014, they lost 28-25. 2015, 37-13. That was the biggest one. 2018, 15-13. A 2-point game. Withers era. I don't recall that one at all. 2020, I remember that one, 40-38. And 2021, I remember that one as well, 38-30. But let's talk about the good times for a little bit. We'll get more into the present, how the Bobcats have done, but let's hit the Wayback Machine and let's talk about that 2005 game. 50-35. And I'd always heard people have talked a lot about that era of that 2005, obviously with the whole Neal and that situation. It was that's kind of the big headline. Although, what's interesting is I did learn some stuff about that, and I can't remember if I said it on the last pod or not. That was a really long pod. This one won't be as long. We'll keep it a little shorter. We'll just keep it to a preview of the game. That was an hour and a half pod. I know the Wizard Zachary Webb sure appreciated that. But something that I was talking to some of the older Bobcats out there, some of the SWT cats out there at the tailgate, talking about that 2005 team and that Neal with a minute and a half left. Game was tied. Bobcats could have played to take the lead. Instead, they went to overtime, ended up losing in overtime. That was Northern Idaho. But they were saying that the Neal down there was at a necessity because they only had 4 offensive linemen ready to go. That's obviously, this is hearsay. I'm hearing this at a tailgate, but I thought that was interesting. I wonder what there is to that. I'd like to talk to Barrick Neely about that one sometime. I know next time I get a chance to, that'll be something I want to bring up. I'm sure he doesn't like talking about that Neil, but still pretty interesting. But let's talk about that Georgia Southern game from 2005. It was a playoff game, first playoff game for the Bobcats. 50-35 comeback win. This was before my era. I got to Texas State. I started covering the Bobcats 2008. Got here in 2007. Started covering. My first year at the University Star was 2008. And so I've been covering the Bobcats ever since 2011, 2012. Those 2 seasons I didn't cover. Otherwise, I've been all the way through. So what is that, 10, 11 years straight? It's a long time. It's a lot of Bobcats. But 2005, I hear about this season. I heard about it back in 2008, and I still hear about it in 2023. People talk about it. But I decided to pull up the recap that the school put out from that game. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I kind of wanted to just go through it because their notes are. I thought this was a pretty good recap of it. But here we go. Let's check this out. This is on txst.com. After the game, Texas State quarterback Barrick Neely completed 4 touchdown passes, accounted for a school record 526 yards of total offense, and became Texas State's all-time passing leader as the Bobcats came from behind to post a 50-35 win over tradition-rich Georgia Southern in the first round of the NCAA Division I AA playoffs on Saturday. 1AA, now known as FCS. In throwing for a school record 400 yards, a first against Georgia Southern team in 109 games. I thought that was an interesting note. First time 400 yards against Georgia Southern in 109 games. Neely surpassed David Williams for the career passing record. He now has 6,774 passing yards. Williams finished his career with 6,677 passing yards. I should have looked it up before. I don't know if that's still the lead or if it's Bradley George. I don't know if he got in there or not, but interesting stuff. Neely has also now accounted for the top 2 season totals, passing for 2,443 yards this year to rank second behind his sophomore year performance. With the win, Texas State improves to 10-2 and will play to host Cal Poly December 3rd in the quarterfinal of the playoffs. Kickoff for the game has yet to be determined. The Mustangs, 9-3, advanced to the quarterfinals after winning on the road at Montana 35-21. Georgia Southern finishes the year 8-4. Georgia Southern led 35-16 with just over 4 minutes to play in the third quarter when the Bobcats began a furious comeback, which saw the team score 34 unanswered points. Defensively, Texas State held the Eagles to 0 total yards on 12 plays in the fourth quarter after surrendering 499 yards through 3 quarters of play. I'll end the recap there. But that was, I thought that was a lot of, when I was reading that earlier, doing some prep for this, I was like, I should just I'm basically going to type all of that into my prep, so I might as well just read it because that was an interesting game, a comeback win, a playoff win for the Bobcats. So you got that over Georgia Southern. Talk about these Sun Belt losses. That 2021 one, it was a 30-30 loss, was tied at 17 at halftime. What is this? 2 other games were 2-point games. Another one is a 3-point game. The only outlier is 2015 at 37-13. The final Fran year was the one beatdown, but it's still been a tough go for the Bobcats against Georgia Southern. Let's talk about Georgia Southern's coach a little bit, Clay Helton. I'm sure a lot of you know him from his USC days. He was the coach at USC. I knew he had an interesting history, so I wanted to go back and look at it. So he was hired at USC in 2010 as the quarterback coach by Lane Kiffin. A lot of great names in this, so that's kind of why when I was looking at him, I was like, I definitely want to talk about this as well. He took over as the interim coach in 2013 after Ed Orgeron resigned. When Steve Sarkisian was hired to replace Kiffin. So all those names. Ed Orgeron was the interim coach. Steve Sarkisian was hired to replace Lane Kiffin, so then Orgeron leaves. Helton was retained by Sark, and then he ended up replacing Sark after the drunken tirade at Salute to Troy. Something about get ready to F and fight on, baby. Something like that. I don't remember exactly. But, he obviously is dealt with those demons, and he's at Texas now and doing much better. But that was 2015. That was a dark time for Steve Sarkisian. But he took over full time, and he was there from 2021 after that. After his second interim stint led him to being the full time coach, and he was there for 6-7 seasons, 46-24. Won the Pac-12 in 2017 with USC. I think that matters too. A couple years removed from taking over as interim, he's able to win the conference. His last 2 years were weird. He went 5-1 in 2020 because COVID, shortened that whole year, especially on the West Coast. And then he went 1-1 in 2021 before being fired. Lost to Stanford, and they fired him after a couple games. Interesting deal. They're probably making room for the, Riley, who they have now. Who knows what the inner workings were at that situation. But 46-24 as a coach at USC, I mean, that's respectable. It's a winning record. I mean, granted, you are at one of the more at least well known, I was going to say prestigious universities. I may even still put it there as far as like the history of college football. Even it's not at the powerhouse it once was, but it's still one of the big brands for sure. And you have that; it helps with recruiting and a lot of expectations with that history that I was just talking about. But to still keep that job and maintain it and have some really really good offenses there in between. I think that's worth noting. And for a guy, I was surprised when his next stop was a Sun Belt team. He is one of the higher paid coaches in the Sun Belt, going to Georgia Southern. They had to change a lot, completely change up their scheme and everything to make room for Clay Helton and what he does in this brand of offense, this pass happy offense, which we're about to talk about. It was interesting that he chose Georgia Southern, but as you heard in that recap from 2005, what was the description of Georgia Southern? It was a tradition-rich Georgia Southern, is what it said in that recap from all the way back in 2005. So, even though it might not be, it's not one of the more, it's not as famous as a program as USC. There's still a lot of really good tradition there, and there definitely is at Georgia Southern. But we're not here to talk about their history and their tradition. We're going to talk about this game. Texas State versus Georgia Southern. Bobcats are the underdogs in this one. 2 points. They're +2 in this game. The over-under 71.5, which is incredible. It's pretty high. It tells you what two high-powered offenses are going up against each other on Saturday night at Bobcat Stadium. It should be fun. We'll see how fun it is. On the surface, you think, oh man, it's going to be a lot of passing, a lot of yards through the air in this one, but maybe not for the Bobcats. We'll talk more about that. Before that, I'll tell you this: Georgia Southern's definitely going to throw the ball. It's what they do. They have the number one passing offense in the Sun Belt. Texas State has the number one offense scoring in total yards, but as far as passing offense yards per game, Georgia Southern leads the Sun Belt in that. Their rushing offense, though, is second to last in the conference. They're third in scoring offense, 33.8 points per game. Although they did play Wisconsin, they have played JMU. So their two losses that they have. They're 6-2, 3-1. Should also say their record. Second in the East right now, behind JMU, but with the ineligibility deal hanging over JMU as they transition to FBS. Looks like Georgia Southern is in the driver's seat of the East, at least for that championship game that's coming up. But like I was saying, 33.8 points per game. Texas State still leads the Sun Belt, 35.1 points per game. Georgia Southern, they run the ball only 39% of the time. They do not run it often. As I said, they were the second to last rushing offense. They have the second to last rushing offense as far as yardage output in the Sun Belt. They also, they pass the ball a lot. So with that, they lead the Sun Belt in interceptions with 13, although 5 of them was against Wisconsin for Davis Brin. I think that's worth noting as well. Pretty good quarterback, Davis Brin. And Bobcats only have 4 interceptions this year, though. So that's the one thing where it's like, oh, they throw a lot of interceptions. There's some opportunity there. But the Bobcats, they haven't had a lot of those opportunities to get those interceptions. So we'll see how they do, and especially after last week, seeing what happened to the pass defense, it doesn't create a ton of confidence in that area for them. But they still get after the passer pretty well. Because they're third in conference in sacks with 23, second in the nation in TFLs. I talked about that on the last episode. They have to get after the quarterback. I mean, the depth is more there on the defensive line than it is in the defensive backfield. Somebody didn't talk about last game that I'm just not thinking of. Sam Latham. He didn't dress for last game, tweeted about it, but I don't think I brought it up on the pod. And that's usually a starter, big guy, 6'7", who's the incarnate word transfer. He gets a lot of those TFLs and some of those sacks for the Bobcats. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes back for this game, because they're going to need him. They're going to need the whole arsenal of this defensive line to get after the quarterback, because that's what this defense is. It's how it's built. They're going to play man coverage, and they're going to try and go get the quarterback. And against the team that passes the ball as much as they do, I guess you have two plans of action you could do here. You could change the scheme and go to zone, and play it safe and try and do that. But you haven't practiced that a lot. It's not the identity of this defense. With change can come mistakes with that drastic of a change, and so that doesn't seem to me like something they're going to do that at all. They're not gonna change it up. Maybe a few zone packages here and there, but they're going to stay true to their identity, and that's to go get the quarterback. TFL. It's not going to be a lot of TFL. It's not going to be a lot of running, but to get in the backfield and put pressure and sack the quarterback, that's what they're going to try to do. A lot of them. They're going to need to do that this game. They're going to have to stop the plays before they get going, because once they get going for Georgia Southern, they really get going. Sacks, turnovers, that's what they got to have. They haven't had a ton of the turnovers. They've had a good amount of the sacks. A lot of things are going to have to go right that necessarily haven't this season, specifically pertaining to the defensive backfield. And again, I said this before. I think I've said this ad nauseum. It's not a knock on any of the starters or any of their backups. There's just not enough of them. I just wish there was more of them. With the way this defense is built, they have to exert a ton of energy. By constantly, the defensive line is constantly going aggressive towards the quarterback, towards the play in the backfield, point of attack. So they're going all forces this way. That means the DBs, they're in man coverage, so they're not in their little zone areas where a receiver, if he's in this 5-yard zone, then I got him. But if he goes out of that zone, then the safety's got him. No, man. I mean, if he's on a 5-yard route or a 20-yard route, they're along for the whole ride. And so that creates, you get tired, you get exhausted. It's what you see at the end of the game when the big plays happen. Those are tired legs. Those are tired legs guarding those receivers. So that's an issue. And with that issue, you got to get after the quarterback. That's how you counteract that. And that's what they've done. And when they've been successful this season, that's what they do. Got to bring it this game. That's an area that they're definitely going to need it, because they're going to pass. They're going to pass. And you could go light in the box in zone coverage, as I was saying, which they won't. They're gonna go hard after the quarterback, and they're definitely gonna need to, because Davis Brin, he's on one. I didn't write anything about Davis Brin in my notes here, although I was reading about him and looking him up and everything. I mean, he's from Bernie Champion, Tulsa transfer. He's right there with TJ Finley in stats. I can pull up those stats really fast while I'm thinking on it. Let's look at these passing leaders. He leads the Sun Belt in yards, 2,456, 17 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. They have 13 as a team. The backup got 1, but he's got 12 himself. This is the 1 and 2 quarterbacks in the conference. The 1 and 3 scoring offenses in the conference going at each other. 2 pretty good offenses. But even though TJ Finley, it's a nice unintentional segue I have here. Even though TJ Finley is neck and neck with Davis Brin passing yards and everything. And the Bobcats are doing really well passing the ball. 2 interceptions last week. I get it. The fumble by Finley when he's going back for a pass, I get it. But they've still had some success passing, and then before I get into this, I'm not saying don't pass the ball. But this is probably a good game to remember that you have the number 2 rushing offense in the conference. You have Mahdi, who's crushing it. You have some pretty good backups. We haven't seen a ton of them, any of them. We get spurts of Davenport, Calvin Hill for a little bit a couple games ago, and then nothing last game. He might still be injured though because he did leave ULM injured. Jeter, he's been a short yardage back. We've seen some fumbles, but you still look Mahdi. Obviously, that's the main guy. You have guys like Malik Hornsby who can do some crazy things running with the ball. But why the big reason why I'm thinking run here? Remember, you have the number 2 rushing offense in the conference. It's not anything necessarily that Georgia Southern is against the rush defense, and I think they're like 7th or 6th. I didn't type it down. It's middle of the pack as far as rush defense in the conference, but they are 2nd in interceptions. They don't have the statistically, like yardage wise, one of the better pass defenses, but they are opportunistic. They get interceptions to the tune of 11 of them already this season. Again, the Bobcats have 4 to kind of give you a measuring stick for that. And when I first saw that, when I saw 11 for them, I was like, okay, well, who's their guy? Who's the ball hawk? Who's the guy on this defense that's getting tons of interceptions? And I was fascinated to find out that it's actually 11 interceptions by 10 different guys on this team. It's spread out pretty far in between these guys. I mean, the only guy who has 2 is Marquez Trent Watson. He has 2. I have a list because I couldn't believe that at first. So I had to go through and okay, who has an interception on this defense? But here you go. Here's who has 1 interception for Georgia Southern. Demel Hickman, Cameron Williams, Kadri Jackson, Isaac Walker, TJ Smith, Tyrell Davis, Jalen Denton, BJ Mays, and my favorite name, Shamar Bartholomew. Great name there. They all have 1 interception. That tells me that they all can get that ball. They all are opportunistic in that defensive backfield. Tells me they have a pretty good scheme as far as getting turnovers. So maybe in what we've seen from TJ Finley recently, the last 2 games, the first 6 games of the season, terrific. The last 2, we've seen those turnovers. The pick 6, the 2 last week. It's an issue, the interception. So maybe not have as much of a 50-50 balance, maybe 60-40 running the ball. Try and run the ball on this defense because they will make you pay. Yeah, because Georgia Southern, they are 1-2 in games where they don't get interceptions. Losses to Wisconsin and James Madison. And the season opening win over the Citadel, 34-0, Georgia Southern won, but the Citadel only attempted 8 passes. 43 rush attempts, 8 passes for the Citadel. Thanks for coming, 34-0. But don't pay attention to the Citadel one. It's the Wisconsin JMU games. If you can keep the ball out of this defense's hands, you have a better chance of winning. Wow, what a revolutionary thing I just said right there, huh? But no, but seriously, and by running the ball more, you keep the ball out of the air more. Keeps it out of their hands more. 16 touchdowns on the ground. Georgia Southern has allowed. Their defense has allowed. 202.8 yards per game for the Bobcats. Only 2 teams in the Sun Belt averaging 200 yards or more per game rushing. It's Louisiana to Texas State. So just remember that you have that defense, because Georgia Southern they want a shootout, and if you can run the ball, if the Bobcats can run the ball and keep it away from a shootout as much as possible, that's what you want. That over under, I was talking about 71.5. The Bobcats want it to be under. This is probably one of the few games where you'd say that. where before a lot of these other teams Texas State has played, they want to control the clock. They want to run the ball. This team wants to score. They want to score now, and then they want to pick you off, and then they want to score again. It's almost it's a dose of what they've been doling out. So it'll be interesting to see if they can flip it a little bit and take that control away. We know Madi's going to get carries. He's was held no cast last game, over 100 yards, his third 100-yard game this season, looking like he's going to be the first 1,000-yard rusher since Rob Lowe. I'm going to knock on some wood there for that one. You need a second back to emerge. You know, I was alluding to it a little bit. We've seen some Jeter. We've seen some Davenport. We've seen a little bit of Hill. If he's healthy, I really want to see more Hill. I still very much believe in him. I've seen what he can do a lot over the years here. Hornsby, as I mentioned, Hornsby gets some carries, maybe some jet sweeps in the action. You know, not necessarily tons of things going through the air, but something quick pass behind the line of scrimmage. Where's Donley? Drew Donley? Remember some of those they weren't having a ton of success, but it was some, you know. I mean, the guy's fast. I'm told he's the fastest guy on the team, him and Malik Hornsby. That's why if those are the two fastest guys on the team, they don't need to be on the sideline this game. You know, when we're talking about this offense needing a spark, even when you hear G.J. Kinney at his press conference, he's talking about it, just finding that spark. And Mac Leftwich, when I asked him about reestablishing this offense, is this high-scoring offense, and he said, yeah, it's a good game for it. Like that's a good way to do it. So it'll be interesting to see what their answer is to last week, and everything, because this is a tough one. Things have to go right that have not gone right recently for the Bobcats. A lot of it does. You got to be clean on offense as far as turnovers. Even when I'm saying run the ball, run it a lot, they fumbled. Madi fumbled last week, and it led to a touchdown. So I mean, they have to be clean in those areas, disciplined. They've done better with the penalties. They did well last week, well against ULM. So that part they've cleaned up. They've gotten a little bit more disciplined at. But they have to clean up the turnovers, and then they have to get some on defense. They gotta give this offense a break. There was a point where we were saying the offense needs to give the defense a break. They gotta get the ball back for them. They've been doing a great job getting sacks, getting in the backfield, but especially on a team that's going to pass it as much, an interception or two would really go a long way for slowing down this offense. I got to be honest with y'all. In fall camp, my prediction was this was a game that I didn't think the Bobcats were going to win. I'm still feeling that way. I think it's going to be. This is a really tough opponent. This is a more seasoned coach. It's a more the offense is humming, even though it's not scoring. Like I was saying, Texas State still leads the Sun Belt in scoring, but they've had Wisconsin, they've had JMU, they've had some really tough opponents. And I think this is a really good team, and I think the Bobcats are a little bit down right now. I would love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times. I was wrong when I said Texas State was going to lose to Baylor. So I'd like to be wrong here again. I'd love to come on the next pod eating crow. But this is going to be a tough one. I think the lower the score, the better for the Bobcats, which is probably won't hear me say that again until like South Alabama. And I guess it's only 3 games away. But this is it's a little different than the opponents we've seen for the Bobcats leading up to this. As far as a predicted score, if it's a high scoring game, that's going to favor Georgia Southern. The lower the better. If they keep it under 40s, I think that's going to favor the Bobcats. I think it'll wind up somewhere around like 38-35. We've seen some close scores here. These are two offenses that score a lot. I think it'll end up around there. But if my prediction is wrong, how it would look if it is wrong. Texas State running the ball a whole lot, running it more than they were to pass it. No turnovers or few turnovers. Go for it on 4th down a little bit more in the red zone. because field goals definitely aren't going to work this game. And I feel like I should add that little caveat when talking about the red zone of Texas State's red zone offense, because I talked a lot about that in the last game. They are still third in the conference in red zone offense, and so they score in their opportunities, but it's getting more points. It's 8 field goals in the red zone as opposed to more touchdowns. But they're still doing a pretty good job in the red zone. But turning those field goals into touchdowns on offense, that's going to be huge against Georgia Southern. They got to do that if this were to be a win. And on defense, as I was saying earlier, get after the quarterback. Davis Brin, you got to hit him before he lets it go, because he can really throw that ball. He can sling it. And an interception or two, some turnovers on defense, they'll go a long way. I think that's what the Bobcats would need to get a win here. I hope I'm wrong. Hope I'm wrong on my prediction. But that'll do it. I'm going to keep it pretty brief on this one. Like I said, the last one was pretty long. Go check out 139. I opened it saying this is number 138, and it was 139. Nobody called me out, so I appreciate you guys. You're too nice to me sometimes in the comments. You totally could have called me out on that one. But check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/winnnoworgetbent. $5 a month. We throw articles up there, lots of good stuff, lots of good content. Check out our merch site, WNOGB.com. I'm wearing the sweater here, Sicko sweater. Let them know who you are by getting some of our gear. Check out our YouTube channel if you're not watching already. Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube. I guess if you're not watching on YouTube, you couldn't see my sweater just then in that last WNOGB.com promo. But that's okay. Log on to the YouTube and subscribe. You don't have to watch it. Just hit that subscribe button. That still helps us. Check us out on Twitter at Win Now or Get Bent. On Instagram at WNOGB. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff on all the platforms, even the audio ones. If you're on Apple, Spotify, get in there. Put a rating, leave a comment, give us some good stuff. All that stuff helps us grow. It's all very helpful. And we've had a lot of growth this season because of a lot of y'all doing that. So I do appreciate you guys getting out there and being vigilant for the pod. You sickos, you are a loyal bunch. Thank you to our sponsors, TGC, Balcones Roofing and Remodeling, Thaddeus Watkins at Edward Jones San Marcos, and of course, Austin Patchmaster. Thank you to the Wizard, Zachary Webb, always making the pod look great. And thank you to you sickos. This is nothing without you, all your support, all you checking out the merch site, the Patreon page, even if you're just liking, subscribing, commenting, all that good stuff. Even if you're just talking about us on Twitter, we are so appreciative of you. You've helped us grow, and you make this thing legitimate. Otherwise, I am talking into the void, talking to myself in a room with foam walls. Do you see this? If you're looking on the YouTube channel, I think that's the something I have in common with people at insane asylums. But all right, everybody. Thank you very much. Win now or get bent.